Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It was a dark and dreary day, one of those that sneaks up on you and leaves you utterly drained. In just a few minutes, everything I thought I had under control descended into chaos. Now, all I could do was wait, anxiously wondering if the nightmare I feared would come true. But dwelling on my failures wasn't in my nature. I wasn't raised to give in to despair. My old sergeant always drilled into me that action is the best defense. If there was nothing else left to salvage from this situation, at least I could fight for my dignity. Even if everything I valued was crumbling, I still had my pride. Luckily, I had received some important information the day before, which gave me a little time to prepare for what was coming. And so, I found myself sitting in my friend's car, hidden in a dark corner of a motel parking lot. I had heard rumors that my wife was supposed to arrive that day, and I nervously kept watch for her red convertible. I didn't have to wait long. She showed up, and right behind her came the man she had chosen to be with, an arrogant guy in a flashy convertible. He parked next to her, exchanged a few words with her, and headed inside to check in. This was my moment. I slipped out of the car, approached hers, and got into the unlocked passenger seat. She gasped in shock. "Connor, what are you doing here?" Keeping my cool, I handed her a brown envelope and said, "Nothing much, just delivering the divorce papers to my soon-to-be ex-wife. Enjoy your time with the real man, and don't worry about coming home." Her face turned pale and she stammered, "No, no, no! You've got it all wrong! This isn't what you think! Let me explain! There's no betrayal, I swear!" But I wasn't interested in listening. "I want a divorce, Margaret. I don't care about you and that coward who just went to get the key for your little getaway. Be with him if you want. I'm done." Tears began to fall from her eyes, and it was clear that her romantic fantasy with her so-called lover was crumbling before her eyes. At that moment, her lover reappeared, triumphantly waving the room key. His eyes met mine, and confusion spread across his face as he asked, "Who's this? What did he do to you?" Calmly, I got out of the car, pulling a small plastic bottle from my pocket. As I approached him, Margaret whispered through her sobs, "This is my husband, and he's divorcing me because of this." Angrily, the man barked, "I'll teach him a lesson for thinking like that." He moved toward me, but before he could do anything, I sprayed his face with a mixture of water and shampoo. Blinded and furious, he staggered back, screaming in pain. While he was disoriented, I moved on to the next part of my plan, a homemade dart with 3 sharp points. I approached him from behind and stuck the dart into his buttock, where it would stay until a surgeon removed it. Leaving him there, blinded by shampoo and with a dart lodged in his body, I turned and walked away as he cursed me in agony. Margaret was still sitting in the car, sobbing uncontrollably. Without another word, I got back in my car and drove off. Whatever happened that day, one thing was clear. Their romantic evening was completely ruined. This was the beginning of the end for me. My name is Connor Smith. I'm 42 years old, married to Margaret, who is 40. We have 2 children, Emile, who's 12, and Estelle, who's 9. We've been together for 20 years, 16 of them in marriage. On the surface, we had that perfect life, a stable family and a cozy home. But happiness? We never truly had it. In my opinion, most of our problems in the marriage stemmed from Margaret's mother. She wasn't a monster in the literal sense, but her cruelty was relentless. From the moment we met, she made it clear she had no sympathy for me. It all began with what should have been an ordinary family dinner. What I thought would be a friendly gathering turned into an interrogation. After a barrage of questions, Margaret's mother announced, "I don't like your name. Connor is such a common name. People from decent families don't name their children Connor, Kenny, Ronnie, Molly, Nellie, or Cindy." I sat there, stunned by her audacity. But what shocked me even more was Margaret's silence, and her timid father's too, as she insulted me. That's when I realized the problem wasn't just between me and Margaret. Her family would always be a source of trouble, and unfortunately, those problems never went away. She began her speech by noting that Smith was a surname widely spread among farming families and passed down through generations when such traditions were still customary. Then, she shifted her attention to Margaret, expressing disappointment as she had envisioned a brighter future for her. This especially pertained to the fact that her other daughter, Natalie, was about to marry a man of noble descent. That was the final straw for me. I stood up and interrupted, "Isn't the father of that man an illegitimate child from a distant branch of the family? And doesn't he live on welfare without a job?" Before anyone could respond, I added, "I need some air." I turned to Margaret and asked, "Will you come with me?" To my surprise, she nodded and we left together, escaping what I perceived as a hostile atmosphere. I had known Natalie's fiancé Alexander since school, and it didn't surprise me that he had convinced Margaret's peculiar mother that he was the perfect match for Natalie. His charm was deceptive, but I couldn't care less. I wasn't invited to their grand wedding, which suited me just fine. I had no desire to attend. The only thing that truly mattered to me was my relationship with Margaret. Over time, it deepened, perhaps too much, as it eventually led to an unexpected pregnancy. When Margaret's mother found out, she was furious, hurling insults over the phone and making it clear that she would not be paying for the wedding. But we didn't care. We opted for a small ceremony with close friends and family. After the wedding, we both found excellent jobs in a city more than 30 miles away from our hometowns, which meant that I had minimal contact with her mother. Margaret's mother poured all her energy and resources into Natalie and Alexander. Shortly after the wedding, Margaret had a miscarriage, but we weathered that loss together. 3 years later, we had a son and then a daughter. Our life with 2 children was peaceful and successful. We earned well, bought a beautiful home, and built a strong circle of friends. Our relationship remained physically fulfilling, and the distance from Margaret's family minimized their influence. Her parents never visited us, and on the rare occasions we went home, I spent time with my own family while Margaret visited hers. Over time, even Alexander grew tired of dealing with his overbearing mother-in-law. Surprisingly, his career was flourishing, and when a new position required him to move nearly 50 miles away, he happily accepted. After several heated arguments, Alexander gave Natalie an ultimatum. Either she moved with him, or they would divorce. She followed him, and once they left, Margaret's mother suddenly remembered she had another daughter, Margaret. Daily phone calls began, in which Margaret's mother constantly criticized me, comparing everything I did, or didn't do, to the supposedly perfect life of Alexander and Natalie. Our relationship began to crack under this pressure. I told Margaret that the real reason Alexander left was to escape her toxic mother, but that only intensified our conflicts. Things got even worse when a new man appeared at Margaret's workplace, a man distantly related to an aristocratic family. She began to admire him, calling him a real man or even Superman, clearly comparing him to me. This man was married, but his wife worked abroad as a nurse in Asia and was due to return in a few months. They were planning to buy a house when she returned, but for now, he lived nearby, renting a room from his sister-in-law. Margaret's constant praise of him became unbearable for me. She criticized everything I did, from the way I talked to the way I dressed, always hinting that he was better at everything. Naturally, I couldn't win in these comparisons. Although our physical relationship continued, her enthusiasm noticeably waned. She started making comments like, "Again? Or don't you ever get tired?" If it weren't for our children and Margaret's many good qualities, I might have left long ago. She remained faithful, a great mother, a talented cook, and always took care of herself. We were a good team when it came to running the household and working in the garden, but her constant critical remarks and sharp words turned the woman I once adored into someone distant and unfamiliar. I wasn't the type to silently endure. I responded to her jabs, and our arguments only got worse. One evening, after the children were already asleep, She made another snide remark. I wish you were more like my colleague. That was the final straw. My anger flared up. If you're so in love with that guy, why don't you just run away with him? But if you cheat on me while we're still married, you won't get away with it. If he's bold enough to start something with you, I'll make sure he knows your services won't be free. Margaret exploded with rage, screaming, You pathetic piece of trash! How dare you think of me that way? You'll regret this, mark my words. I calmly replied, Wouldn't it be better if he paid instead of you? I screamed in despair in response, but before she could throw more insults at me, our two frightened and tearful children ran up to us. My focus immediately shifted to calming them down as best as I could. After her outburst of anger, we entered a 2-week stretch of cold silence. On the first weekend, she took the kids to her parents, and on the next, we had guests, Natalie and Alexander. While they were with us, Margaret played the role of a loving wife and behaved affectionately towards me. But as soon as our guests left on Sunday morning, her attitude changed. As soon as we said goodbye to the guests, Margaret turned to me and said, Don't think I'll be doing you any more favors. The situation only worsened by the day. By Thursday, I received an unexpected call at work from one of Margaret's colleagues. After introducing herself, she got straight to the point. We've got a new guy in the office, very attractive, and now 3 of us, including your wife, are competing for his attention. We tried to remind her that she's married to a good man, but she didn't back down. Now she's boasting that she's won him over and is planning to meet him tomorrow at a motel. I thanked her for the warning and asked her to keep the conversation between us so I could handle the situation myself. That evening, when I returned home, Margaret seemed unusually cheerful, and I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. I remembered something an old sergeant had once told me in the Army. He deeply admired the Apache warriors, who were known for their sudden ambushes. They would strike quickly and vanish into the desert. I wasn't one for physical violence, so I decided my best option was to use the element of surprise. Margaret once bragged that her lover had a black belt in some martial art, so I knew catching him off guard would be crucial. Ideally, I would have used pepper spray, but since it was illegal in our country, I had to improvise. After some thought, I settled on a small bottle of diluted shampoo. I tested it on myself and found it quite effective. The sergeant had also spoken about the fear Apache arrows with barbed heads instilled during the border wars. Though I couldn't use a bow and arrows, his words inspired me to head down to my workshop in the basement. I found an old dartboard and started working on my project. I attached small sewing needles at a slight angle to the ends of the darts to create a barbed effect. Pulling these darts out of soft tissue would probably require a hospital visit. I didn't test them on myself, so I hoped they would work when the time came. My plan was simple and didn't require any complex tools. I intended to serve Margaret and her lover with divorce papers, temporarily blind him, and then jab one of the barbed darts into his backside. I doubted he'd want to continue the affair after that. The next morning Margaret dressed provocatively, but I pretended not to notice, and we had an ordinary Friday morning. Later at work, I swapped cars with my friend and colleague Eric, as we often did when he needed to use my larger vehicle. That morning, I stopped by the courthouse to pick up the divorce papers and filled them out during my work break. I was also able to contact the lover's wife, getting her email through a charity in Asia, and planned to inform her about the affair. During my lunch break, I drove past Margaret's office and saw both her car and her lover's in the parking lot. It was clear they had had lunch together and were heading to the motel. I bought a couple of hot dogs and drove to the motel to wait for their arrival. As expected, they arrived, and my plan unfolded exactly as I had envisioned. My time in the Army had not been wasted, and I mentally thanked that old sergeant for his valuable lessons. Around 5:30 that day, I received another call from the woman who had told me about Margaret's affair. She asked, "Were you at the motel today? Did you find what you were looking for?" I replied, "Yes, I was there. But it seems my wife and her colleagues didn't appreciate my presence. I tried to lighten the mood by handing Margaret the divorce papers, but that didn't exactly improve her mood. Her lover became aggressive, and I had to defend myself. Let's just say he's now nursing some injuries in the lower part of his body, and I believe my wife took him to the hospital. In a dry tone, I added, "It wasn't exactly a romantic getaway for them, but yes, everything happened just as you heard. I have no reason to make this up." My wife still hadn't returned, so I suggested to the woman on the phone that she try to contact her directly. "Try calling her mobile," I said, adding, "but I can't guarantee you'll get the whole truth from her." The woman thanked me and asked for Margaret's number, which I gave without hesitation. I hoped their conversation would be civil. Then I sent a letter to the woman in Asia, the wife of Margaret's so-called real man, explaining the entire situation in detail. At 6 in the evening, Margaret entered the house, and I immediately knew she was furious. She glared at me and sharply said, "We need to talk, right now." I was ready. "Did you get everything you wanted from your lover?" I said. "But if you thought I'd stand idly by while you and he made a fool of me, you've gone mad." "No, Margaret." I wasn't going to allow my dignity to be trampled on. "Even if he didn't physically harm you, you hurt him enough that I had to take him to the hospital," she said, "and you'll pay for that." "Actually, we'll all pay for this. 4 adults and 2 children will share the burden of the chaos you've created with this guy," I added. "And if you think his poor wife in Asia is okay after reading my letter, think again. Now she knows exactly who she married." Margaret's voice rose. "Did you really send that letter to his innocent wife? That's cruel." She looked shocked at the mere mention of divorce. "I didn't threaten you with anything," I calmly replied. "Just sign the divorce papers, and in 6 months you'll have your freedom and a fair settlement." I warned her that if she tried to drag out the process with a lawyer, it would only cost her more, and the result would be the same. Reality started to sink in, and her eyes filled with tears. "My God, are you really serious? Please listen to me. I haven't done anything wrong." I cut her off. "Yes, you have. You took your domineering mother's side in her disdain for me just because I don't come from a wealthy family. You let her manipulate you into becoming a nagging wife, and then you started flirting with a colleague whom you've always considered superior to me, as you often said. I know you were competing with 2 other colleagues for the attention of this so-called real man. Then you left work early and went to a motel with him, cheating on me with a married man. You know how I feel about infidelity, so there's no misunderstanding about what comes next." Margaret cried even harder. "I didn't cheat on you today or ever. I only love you. What about our children?" she pleaded. "The children are the only reason I didn't kick you out long ago," I replied. "Every day I hear how I'm not good enough from you and your mother compared to this real man you were infatuated with. I know about the motel, I know about your plans, and I am deeply humiliated. I won't participate in this farce any longer." She realized the show was over, and we began discussing the divorce. Eventually, Margaret signed the papers, but with one condition: that we continue living in the same house and refrain from dating anyone else until the divorce was finalized in 6 months. It's been 6 weeks since I confronted Margaret about her near affair. Strangely, our marriage has taken an unexpected turn. Margaret now seems like a completely different, much better, wife. It's as if she's forgotten how she used to treat me, as if I was worthless. We've started behaving more civilly, even doing more things together than we had in the months leading up to the revelation. Of course, we no longer share the same bed or even the same room, but I don't miss the shallow affection she used to show. As strange as it may sound, I truly believe her when she says she never crossed the line with this real man. It seems their motel meeting was meant to kick off an affair, but they hadn't yet crossed that threshold. As for her real man, his wife filed for divorce and left him penniless. She recently wrote to me saying he's doing fine and that she's forgiven him. We still have 20 weeks left until the final divorce, and I'm not sure if I want to salvage our 16-year marriage. If she tried to cheat once, she'll do it again. When the time came to finalize the divorce, I signed the papers and divorced Margaret. The only thing that saddened me was the fact that I'd only be a weekend dad. That's life. I visited the kids on weekends, but that didn't last long. One autumn evening, I got a call from the police informing me that Margaret had been driving drunk, and the worst part was that our kids were in the car, putting them in danger. That's when Child Services granted me full custody of the kids. As for Margaret, a year later, she was no longer herself. She spent the entire year in a downward spiral of excessive drinking. She was punishing herself, and in the end, my revenge wasn't even necessary. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.